Live at Onigashima. I'm Jimmy.
I'm Anthony, and today we got a great chapter, chapter 1136, The Country That Awaits the Sun. And this is a jam-packed chapter. We got a lot to talk about here. Getting right into the cover story real quick. We got a continuation of Yamato's cover story, and we're getting a little more lore, you know? Like, they captured Hold'em, and it seems like Who's Who kind of has this mysterious base on the island. So I don't know what this is going to lead into. If there's going to be some government shenanigans, maybe.
I think it's cool just to see that the Beast Pirates are still, like, because we kind of wonder, it's like, well, what happened to them on Wano? Where the fuck did they go? We knew some of them were in prisons and stuff, but, like, how did they tear down everyone and get rid of everyone that fast? So I'm interested to see where this goes. Yeah, but definitely not the most interesting part about this chapter.
No, not at all. I mean, to get to the good parts, right? We got a lot of Sun God lore, so we now know that there are two versions of the Sun God, or a lot of different versions, but there's, like, a destroyer guy, and there's a like more Joy Boy-esque kind of Nika, and he's appeared in various stories where the world has ended. So they say that the world has already ended or been destroyed twice before, which is interesting because one, we could assume, like, okay, the first time was the Void Century, and so there has to be even further back, or maybe not, maybe it's not further back, maybe it's later, where
I would assume personally it's further back just because of how everything's kind of worked out, and we don't really know anything from before the Void Century either. Well, we do kind of know stuff from after it, right. So I assume it's further back, but who knows? I mean, because Joy Boy, the one we know about, for instance, I don't necessarily think was the original Nika, and I don't think a lot of people do. So there's probably the original Nika, then the Joy Boy from the Void Century, and then now Luffy.
Right.
I mean, but it could be either way. Maybe there's just more people we don't know about.
Yeah.
But one of the other things I wanted to mention also about there being multiple Joy Boys, I think that might be something that's gotten lost in translation over time. While there could be just different types of Joy Boys, like you said, the destruction one and then the good one or whatever, I think also maybe those were all the same person at first, and it's just how people have interpreted, like, his actions. Like, it happens with Luffy all the time, right? Some people are like, oh, he's a good guy, he's super jovial, but then some people that don't know him, they're like, oh, he's a demon, he's destroying the world. Granted, like, government propaganda, but over time that could happen with the original Joy Boy too, just like word of mouth getting out and stuff.
Well, that kind of transitions into, like, what they're talking about this chapter about Loki, right? Because Loki wants to be, all of them want to be the next Nika or the next Sun God, but Loki seems like he's more, he fits the description a little bit better, like the smiling stuff, like him with his hand over his face in that one panel when they're talking about how he's an antagonist and everything, and then also just like, I think they pointed to Loki as like, oh my god, he's not a good guy. There's a lot of parallels to, like, Zoro, right? How Zoro was introduced. We said before, like, how Zoro was introduced all chained up, and then he ended up being a good guy. Loki, same thing. We think he's gonna be a good guy, and then Luffy now is like, okay, so he's a good guy, and they're like, no. And Kobe was like the same way about Zoro, right? When he first heard about Zoro, or when Kobe was first telling Luffy about Zoro, Kobe was like, no, he's not a good guy, he's not cool, like, you can't be friends with him. And these guys are acting the same way.
That, like, kind of makes me think even more that Loki's a good guy, right? The fact that Luffy's saying it, because usually Luffy is kind of like Oda's, like, way of saying that, hey, this is what's happening, these are the people you can trust, because Luffy's usually not wrong about this stuff. Right. So maybe he flips it on us because, like Zoro says in this chapter, he's like, hey, be careful, like, even if he seems like a good guy, he's probably manipulating you.
And this is
which
Zoro,
I like that Zoro,
you know?
kind of, yeah. I mean, Zoro's always been more, like, deceptive, right? Because he said that about Robin, too, at first, and look where Robin is now. So it might not go anywhere, but I do like that Zoro's pointing it out and kind of being that number two and trying to keep Luffy level-headed and stuff.
I love the dynamic of three, that we're back to this. Like, I feel like the best storytelling in One Piece always happens with, like, these three characters, like Luffy and Zoro kind of taking it to the side and being like, hey, man, Zoro being the good first mate that he is and watching out for Luffy's back, and Luffy being like, what the heck, come on, like, yeah. And then Nami's really, like, I don't know,
feels like old One Piece.
Yeah,
like, I love the fact that Nami's also, like, I mean, they haven't played this aspect up in a while, the whole treasure thing, War. I mean, I guess it kind of did in Egghead. Never mind. But I like seeing it every time. Just her kind of going back to her ways. And yeah, even though she's changing and maturing, She still has her motive.
Yeah, I
She
mean, they
still wants
all
to steal
they,
stuff.
they all have their gags. Like Sanji's doing his thing, Brook had his little thing, and
Yeah.
now that we get back to like the three of them, it's nice to be like, hear Nami being like, yo, I don't know where you guys think you're going without me. Zoro lost, Luffy also probably lost.
Yeah, they definitely would not make it back or get anywhere without Nami there.
Yeah.
Which, speaking of where they're going, though, you got to assume they're going to the castle and potentially are going to go help Loki after getting the key, right? So we also see that the Gods Knights, which are confirmed God Knights in this chapter, which we all assumed, are talking to Loki. I wonder if they're going to end up running into Zoro, Luffy, and Nami at some point.
I'm sure.
And
yeah.
when that happens, like, this is what he's Shanks. Like, we still, I mean, obviously, all of us think this is not really Shanks. Kind of hints at it again, where look, his left eye is covered again in this chapter. He's still cloaked up. We don't see his arms, so we don't see all of Shanks's defining features,
Right.
which just makes me and everyone else think even more that it's not him.
I think there's a lot of dead giveaways actually that it's not Shanks, and I think there's like one of two ways that this can go. Either one, it's clearly not Shanks and it's a clone or a brother or whatever, some look-alike, or Shanks is playing double agent, which I don't really like as much. But he says here, oh, do we have any intel on Loki? Which earlier in the chapter we know that Shanks took down Loki, so he fought him, and Loki's been chained up ever since. So he was literally the last one to fight Loki and see what his powers are. So he would have had to have had intel, and we're assuming that that's probably what even got him the Emperor status, right? So unless Shanks is playing some kind of crazy double agent game here, this can't be Shanks. And another kind of little giveaway that I saw somebody point out on Twitter was there's a panel where you can kind of see Shanks, or not Shanks's, left arm kind of poking through the cloak a little bit, not poking through, but kind of like an indent. And it could have just been like a drawing thing or whatever, but I think that there are a couple signs that this isn't necessarily Shanks. I don't think this is very in character, unless he is a super secret double agent. Who knows?
No, I really don't think he's going to be a double agent. I think we are going to see more and more about Shanks. But speaking about new characters also, we could see Gunko, the other God's Knights, and we can see she has a devil fruit power. What exactly they're going to call it, I don't know. It reminds me a lot of that one ability from Demon Slayer with the person with the arrows, where they have the arrows go in certain directions. But the other thing it reminds me of is it looks a lot like Imu's tail that we saw when he stabbed Sabo. So I wonder if this is related to that. Maybe did Imu give Gunko these powers? Maybe was Gunko there? Because the other thing I've seen people say also is that one time we saw Imu fall to their knees, there was somebody there in the room with them, which now going back is probably one of the God's Knights or some servant or something. And potentially could that have been Gunko? And in which case is Gunko then by Imu's side a lot of the time? And were they there when they were stabbing Sabo basically?
Yeah.
And we actually still don't know the powers of Imu, which could be. I don't know. Maybe they're duplicate devil fruits also somehow.
I think so. My interesting theory about this is I like where it's going with like that. This looks like Imu's power, because you're right, it does. Like it looked like how it happened with Sabo, and I wonder if that's what makes the God's Knights special, is that all of them have some kind of thing that they got passed down from Imu. And so they're trying to recruit Loki into the God's Knights here. And so this kind of makes me think like, okay, we have the Warlords, right? Who are supposed to be, weaker than the Admirals to an extent, but they're pretty strong and they're the military forces and they were pirates. What if there was a level in between Admiral? Obviously these guys are more like celestial dragons than Marines, and so there's kind of a delineation between them. But like, as far as strength wise, what if we got, Warlords, then God's Knights, then Admirals, then celestial dragons, whatever? Because like this is kind of a new tier of strength that it would be nice to have in the story, like moving forward, something that isn't quite so like Luffy's Yonko level, and the first commanders of all the Yonkos have already kind of been taken out for the most part. So it might be nice to have that kind of like middle.
Yeah, we need stronger opponents.
You know what I mean? And Loki's bounty is 2.6 bill, which is higher than any of the Warlords so far that we've given besides Mihawk. And Mihawk, clearly stands out among the rest. But I think that it's interesting that like I don't like what are the requirements to be a God's Knight, like what why did they come to Loki? Just because he's strong? Is it because he has this special devil fruit that the government wants? Probably that too. But
I think it's probably due to the devil fruit. I feel like that devil fruit has to be some like Nika-esque devil fruit, which is what they're looking for. Because if this is a devil fruit that the king of Elbaf has always had, and everyone probably thought that all the kings of Elbaf, or at least most of them, were probably like right there to be the next Joy Boy, right? They were saying in this chapter, we said it already, everybody wants to be the next Joy Boy. And who better in Elbaf culture than the king? And if the devil fruit is passed down between all of them, then that devil fruit probably has to relate to something like that also. So I'm still very curious to see what that devil fruit can be, but I don't know. I feel like it's still some kind of like trickster devil fruit or something, because I mean it does seem like Nika overall is kind of like that, right? Just from what we've seen with Luffy and him just kind of like being goofy, like joking around with a lot of things.
Yeah, and
maybe Loki's devil fruit is similar to that, where he's just like, fucking around with things.
Yeah. I think that it also kind of, it made it a point in this chapter that he's an antagonist, right? Like he or an antagonizer. He's causing mischief all over the land, whatever.
Does things for the lols.
Does things for the lols, exactly. I still like the idea that he's like a shapeshifter of some kind. I think that would be like a really big devil fruit to have, but there's really no way to know right now. But I think it's interesting that Gunko has displayed like two different powers here. Like if this is a devil fruit and not something by Imu, I don't know what it would be, you know what I mean? Because the other power that she showed before was like instant pain or something, like against
I have a feeling what we saw before was just this. Oda just didn't draw it explicitly, so he didn't like show us. I feel like maybe she like did something like through the ground or something, and then it like shot through them, and it was just like we couldn't see it at the time. So I don't want to say she necessarily has two different powers, but one of the things that I did like about seeing from Loki, though, is just like his resolve in this chapter when they do come and talk to him, and then being like, hey, we're going to threaten you. You're going to join us. If not, we're going to kill like your friend. And then Loki's like, well, so be it. Like, if they die, they die, which I think also speaks a lot to Elbaf culture. It's like, I don't think any giant, at least any of the old like era giants that are all about like war and stuff, would want somebody else to sacrifice themselves, like to save it. They want to be the sacrifice. They would be willing to die to like protect something they care about and like stick to their morals and their ideas.
Yeah.
And I think we see that here in Loki, and we can tell. Like, I mean, this to me at least shows that he's gonna have Conqueror's Haki, which I think a lot of us probably assumed anyways. But just this type of resolve is exactly what we see from the people that have Conqueror's Haki also.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's interesting because like I think that Oda, although we have a lot of parallels to Zoro ends up being like a pretty good guy. You know what I mean? Like he takes care of Chopper, he fights for people that are in need. And maybe Loki will do that too and become like a good guy, but this kind of stuff is telling me that he might be a little bit morally gray, like he might be slightly darker and different than Zoro. Granted, Oda does like to have the same tropes and kind of have recalls to it, so he could just be like all of that could just foreshadow, Zoro's whole thing could foreshadow him being a good guy in the end, and like maybe he's just an admiral, whatever, and his puppy survives.
I was gonna say Zoro is pretty morally gray himself, to be honest. Like we even see it in this chapter, which is another parallel, like just between Loki and Zoro in the chapter, and the focus on them two. Is Zoro was telling Road like, yeah, like don't worry, I would have just killed you, like no problem, bro. Like don't even worry about it.
Yeah, but that's a little bit different. Like killing somebody that is actively like chasing you and being your enemy versus like letting your dog die. Like, do you think Zoro would let Chopper die or like Gyukimaru? You know what I mean? I don't think so.
I mean, not Chopper necessarily, because I think that's a different scenario. But if they had like some type of just animal there, yeah, I think he would let it die to protect the rest of his crew and stick to his ideals, right? Like if there was like an animal he cared about, and somebody said, "Hey, you can never be the greatest swordsman without doing this," I think he would do it.
Nah,
right?
he wouldn't.
Because
Nah, 100% no. Completely disagree. He would kill the person that's forcing him to do that, and he would get around it somehow. I
I
think.
think Luffy is more like that. I think Zoro is a lot more ambiguous, and Zoro cares less about the killing stuff in general too. I mean, he's literally called the King of Hell. So
Yeah, but I don't think that means he's like. Yeah, I don't know that Zoro is like so morally great. I don't know. Like I see Zoro as more more just than that. Like for example, the samurai thing where he was like at the beginning of Wano where he was gonna commit seppuku, or they were telling him to, and then he took out the guy that was like really the bad guy. Or like when in Wano again, he was sympathizing with all the people that you know, ate the smile fruits and everything. Like I don't know. Like I
mean,
see
exactly.
Zoro as more
Well, I
sympathetic.
think exactly. Like I'm not saying Zoro doesn't have morals, but like this is like in essence just kind of like a random wolf that like walks around with Loki.
No, it's like his friend,
Like,
dude. He was like, you know, he was like, oh, don't hurt him at first. Like, or he was
well,
like,
that's like what Luffy
concerned.
said on Ruskaina though. Like, he said like, "Oh, these animals are my friends," but he also told the animals like, "Hey, I would eat you." Like, I mean, same type of thing. Like Luffy does the same stuff also.
Yeah, no,
right?
but okay. Yeah, you're right. But I think in the end, we're just gonna have to see where Loki's character goes. I think there's a chance that he goes a little darker, but maybe maybe not. You know, maybe it's just like Zoro and he's a 1-to-1 parallel. I guess we'll have to see in the next chapter coming up, because I have to assume that we're gonna get a resolution to this whole potential dog dying thing, because viewers never like when a pet dies. But you know, even if he does die, like it's something that we probably need to like see to get more understanding of the character. And I also think, like you said, the Straw Hats and these Gods Knights are probably going to come to a head very soon. So I think in the next couple
I could even
chapters,
see
you
it
know,
being like Luffy kind of calling their bluff, right? Like they said, "Oh, we're gonna kill your dog," and then Luffy's like, "Okay, go for it," like trying to like, because they're kind of just trying to stir him up and rile him up, right? And he's just kind of calling their bluff and saying, "No, they're not gonna do it," and then maybe they do end up trying to do it, but then the Straw Hats come and save them also,
that's how
right?
that's how I
Like
see it playing
that's
out.
what
It's
I
like
could
at
see
the last
happening
second,
too.
like Luffy comes and something stupid happens. Ba, 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 ba,
You get the music
and
playing in the background as he comes.
yeah, dude. So we'll see in the next chapter, but that's all we got for this one. There's a lot to talk about in this chapter as always, but thank God
Yeah, and
we're
thankfully,
back.
no break next week. We're over the big slump of the holidays, which I mean, this happens every year, so it's not really a surprise. But it is always a slog to get through these few weeks with like barely any One Piece.
We're back.
Yeah, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and fight us in the comments.
Fight us in the comments and throw your theories down below too. This is a theory chapter, you know, the Sun God stuff. Heavy lore. So if you guys got any theories, please share them in the comments.
Yeah. All right. Peace out, y'all.
Peace.